Welcome, everybody. Woo! I'm super excited. Peter, thank you for joining me. This is a privilege to have this conversation with you. The aim of what we're talking about is ultimately to talk about creativity, because that's your field of expertise. But before we do that, I just want to learn a little bit and let the audience learn a little bit about T-Mobile, which is obviously a phenomenal company. But before that, can you just share a little bit about your role and responsibilities?
Sure. So my role is I'm the chief creative officer, which is really like the chief brand officer. I have oversight of all content creation for T-Mobile, Metro by T-Mobile, and it's all platforms. So it's everything from a digital banner ad to Super Bowl spots to content that we put in our 6,000 doors across the country. So it's soup to nuts. We work on we sort of have 80 active projects going every single week, and we produce about 3,000 pieces of content every month to fill all of our channels.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot. We just shot 2 commercials last week before I came, so it's like...
Great. Well, let's talk more about that a little bit in a little bit. But I want to learn a little bit more about T-Mobile. I mean, obviously a huge organization, huge company. They recently merged with Sprint into a multi-billion-dollar organization. Can we talk about the different cultures of these two brands and how you bring them together in such a large merger?
I think I should start with T-Mobile and Sprint merged. They merged on April 1st, 2020. If you all remember that date, that was pretty much all of us went home. So we had to merge 2 cultures without ever meeting anybody for 2 years, which was a little bit of a challenge, to be quite honest with you. And T-Mobile, based in Bellevue, Washington. Sprint was based in Overland Park, Kansas. They still are. We still have a headquarters there. But it's really, as we thought about the brand, T-Mobile is the brand that we put into the marketplace. We have retired the Sprint brand. But really we're trying to blend our cultures because Sprint had a rich history of how they went to market. They tended to be a little bit, I would say, more on the conservative side from middle of America. T-Mobile is a little bit more brash, West Coast type of brand. But we've been honestly seamlessly melding our work styles together. And after almost 3 years, I'm going to say, the merger's kind of over, and it's all focused now T-Mobile forward, and everybody's pretty much holistically thinking about how we take the T-Mobile brand to even bigger places than it was before we started all of this.
Yeah, so obviously future forward one company, but can I just understand a little bit? You've got 2 probably different consumers. How have you brought those 2 consumers together, or are you doing different messaging?
Well, first off, the great news is we're a year ahead of our planned merger strategy, which means we have migrated 100% of the Sprint customers onto the T-Mobile network, which is, a feat in and of itself. But you're absolutely right. When we started the merger, and again, it was during the pandemic, we had to embrace Sprint customers. First off, they were Sprint customers. They didn't choose T-Mobile, so we had to convince them why T-Mobile is a great opportunity, because the last thing we wanted to do was you just buy this company with millions of customers and they choose to leave you. So we aggressively marketed to them on a one-to-one basis, ensuring, number one, they had the right devices. We had to migrate a lot of people because they were on a different network to devices that worked on the T-Mobile network. But we really embraced them, and from day one, we have this rewards program called T-Mobile Tuesdays. We instantly gave all Sprint customers access to T-Mobile Tuesdays. It's free stuff every week. It's not even really loyalty. It's just great things that we give people every week. And lo and behold, we came out and we did a pretty darn good job of losing very few customers along the way.
Okay. I hope everyone can hear with the drums rumbling in the background, but
it's kind of like the beat, It's kind of like go like this.
Actually, can I just come back on that question a little bit? Are there any specific learnings, as the chief creative officer, that have so far led to a slight shift in what you've had to do?
Well, the one thing, having now done a merger, I will tell you the first thing and foremost thing is to take it slow and listen to the needs of your new customer base. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I talked about merger closed April 1st, 2020. We literally took Sprint store signs down August 1st. And I would tell you, learning from that, it was too soon. We should have waited probably 6 to 8 more months and then migrate, because we were confusing consumers. So we learned a good lesson, but we quickly sort of maneuvered our way around it and ultimately got the right branding on the storefront so Sprint customers knew that they truly could go back into the stores.
Well, I think that's a great learning, and certainly for anyone here that is going to go through a merger, there's insight number one. So that's incredibly helpful. All right, let's turn to the fun stuff a bit more, and sort of turning to your role in creativity. And I guess, how are you looking to grow market share for T-Mobile?
Well, probably the one thing that we do is we like to disrupt the marketplace, disrupt the wireless marketplace, and we've done that consistently for about the last 10 years. And what we mean by that is create consumer propositions that then I turn into creative ideas. But it really starts, wireless are rate plans. So it's not like they're these really exciting things that we get to sell. But you find what the consumer pain points are, you go and solve them. I mean, I'll be honest with you, when we launched what was called the Un-carrier strategy, which is about 11 years ago, we got rid of contracts. And that was like this bold move, and everybody's like, oh, contracts, that's for prepaid brands. But in reality, everybody hates contracts. And it was a consumer insight that we just leaned into, and our competition didn't follow 10 years later. So it's finding disruptive moments, finding that unique white space that then I use as a platform and turn it into creative ideas. And we start the thinking really early on in the process. We ideate both product teams and creative teams to really think, how are we going to disrupt and be bold in the marketplace?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Contracts are painful in that world. Actually, they also are in the rental car industry as well. So maybe that's a good insight. All right, so obviously you've been, as well, T-Mobile incredibly proud, actually, and have stood up for brand purpose. Can you share how this is shaping up? And again, with the merger as well, what success will look like for T-Mobile as you think about purpose moving forward?
Well, there's a couple of things. So our sort of corporate mission is being the best in the world, connecting customers to their world. And that's all customers. And we firmly believe that wireless is the democratization of, it's like a human right. I mean, I hate to say it, but everybody should have access to it. So one of our biggest and most proudest programs that we have in the marketplace is a project called Project 10 Million. And Project 10 Million basically gives households without Wi-Fi or cellular access. It's for students and communities. And I would tell you, we had launched it, and then the pandemic hit, which all of a sudden, we went, New York City Public Schools reached out to us. They needed 500,000 connections for their students. And so we partnered with them and made that happen. But it's a big program, and we're not stopping until we get to the 10 million customers. We're about halfway there right now. So that's just a core element to how we're thinking as a brand. And it's really using what now is scale. We're now a big scale player in the marketplace. We want to use our scale for good, for the good of society, especially the U.S. consumer.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Again, very, very good insight. Another question I wanted to ask before we sort of look at advertising and media and platforms is I quickly wanted to touch on the T-Mobile stores and the bricks and mortar, and just understand how that is core to the brand experience, and if so, what should consumers who go into the stores take away?
So I should ask the question, what % of wireless in the U.S. is purchased in store? Anybody have an idea? How about between 90 and 95%?
No.
So people go into stores to buy wireless. It's crazy. In the European markets, 70%. So the U.S. still has a way to go because of the digital operation. But our stores are, number one, a brand expression. It's a brand touch point. It's an interaction with a human being who actually, we trust I give you my phone, I want you to give it back to me ready to go. And we have a philosophy that if you walk in a T-Mobile store, you walk out working. So we don't want you to have to go worry about anything when you leave. We want you to have any apps that you want set up. We want all your pictures transferred so you're ready to go. Because, I'll tell you, one of the biggest pain points or what scares consumers more, they don't want to lose their contacts and they don't want to lose their pictures. And they're fearful that if they do it themselves, something's going to happen. So that's why they use our reps to help them do that.
Yeah, so that's incredibly important then. Okay, thinking about creativity and market messaging, what's one of your proudest creative moments?
Oh my God, 13 years at T-Mobile, there is a lot of proud moments. But I'll give you one of my favorite ones. A year ago, January, we had just launched a small project called T-Mobile Home Internet, 5G Home Internet. And the CEO calls me up and goes, I think we should put it on the Super Bowl. I'm like, it's January 19th. January 19th, mind you. I'm like, okay, we don't own a spot, so we have to go buy a spot. We owned a spot, but for a different part of our business. So I figured out how to secure a spot. Had to go to my creative partners and say, can you create a spot for the Super Bowl in 2 weeks? And we did, and it's actually a campaign that we keep doing. I don't know if you're all familiar with Donald Faison and Zach Braff. They're great doctors. So we produced a spot with them, and it was one of the songs from West Side Story. And not only did our challenge of producing a spot in 2 weeks, we had to get the estate to agree to let us use the song in a commercial production, which in and of itself was a feat. But the spot turned out amazingly well. We've produced, this year, to keep it going, we brought Zach and Donald back, but we brought John Travolta and did a song with them from Greece, which, again, you sort of build these franchise with talent, and they become really... They're our partners, they're our creative partners, and they're also our friends, which is why I think the spots just turn out so well. But I have to tell you, it's just some of my favorite creative that we've produced.
Love that. Let's talk a little bit about diversity and inclusion, which is important both to BBC and T-Mobile and obviously all brands. Can you share some insight into how that is going within T-Mobile, and particularly from a creativity perspective, and where you see even greater success and opportunity in the future?
Number one, our workforce is one of the most diverse workforces in all of business in America. And it's been our philosophy in how we create content and how we host meetings. Bring your true self to work. Whoever you are as an individual, you need to show up and bring your thinking and your ideas to the table. And we foster that across pretty much everything we do. And what's interesting is we have ERGs, employee groups within the company, and they're outgrowths. So if you have a passion and you want to start an ERG about, it could be Pride and Allies or the Women's in Business Network or lesbians who are in tech. It's a whole range of different types of organizations that we let our employees self-define what they are, and then we as a company support their efforts, which is, again, it goes back to that same thing. We care about you as an employee, and we want to do what's right for them. I'm the executive sponsor of Pride, and what's great about in that role is I get to work with such talented people from across the organization, and my job is just to help break down roadblocks and help ensure that they're getting what they need, but everything they do is based upon their marketing plan that they established for their ERG.
Yeah, I think that's great. And when it comes to resource, actually, on that, how do you identify talent around creativity?
My team is a pretty diverse set of individuals. We have people who work with agencies. We have an in-house studio of 250 people, so we create a lot of our own content internally. And what we really look for, we sort of use a broad range of thinking, but number one, you have to be creative, solves problems for brands. And that's really what it comes down to. So when we talk to creative talent, we ask them a lot of questions about, so how would you solve this complex business problem through creative? Because at the end of the day, you have to be able to communicate to the consumer in a way that's relevant, easy to understand, And the more and more individuals that we find like that, I mean, we have a great internal culture of creativity. If you ever go to the T-Mobile website, all that content is built and created through our T Studios internally. So it's not only people that work on the brand, because then you can they come in, they immerse themselves in our products and services. So it makes us to be able to create content in a pretty seamless and fast way. Like, you don't have a lot of time having to re-educate people.
Yeah. And thinking about that resource and thinking about AI, how do you think AI is going to change, this is a big question, your industry, but actually, how are you utilizing AI at the moment in the creative process?
So we're just at the beginning of it. And, really some of the things that we're trying to figure out is human will always be part of the creative process. But there are some things that I believe we can use AI for to really help us figure out how do we take and use scale. Because, I mean, again, I said 3,000 pieces of content, but we, for example, did out of home in 700 markets where you had to literally customize not just 700 pieces of content. I think the last number by the time we did it all was more like 5,000 pieces of content for it. Like, that all could have been done by AI. By just loading up, here are the markets we're going to, here's the message, because it's the same message, it just has to be regenerated. So that's really some of the stuff that we're looking to actually help evolve our internal studios to think a little bit differently about it.
Yeah, that's exciting. And I guess also, how do you engage or contribute or inspire creativity within the organization? I know you talked about bringing Magenta back, for example, but yeah, if you could just talk through that process.
Sure. So let's start with the Magenta story, because it's when I got to T-Mobile 13 years ago, there was like this, the brand used to say Magenta was just lipstick. It was just the T in T-Mobile, that was all. And I'm like, we had to go disrupt. We had to use creativity to disrupt, because our brand was a little bit of a failing brand in the US marketplace. So one of the places that I went from a creative standpoint, I'm like, you have this asset. It's this color that no one's using it in marketing. Why wouldn't we go lean back into it? And lo and behold, 13 years later, it's trademarked to T-Mobile USA, which is, T-Mobile Global, not just USA. We're one of the very few brands that actually have it. But inspiring creative, like, I like, the way that I think about it is, I'm not creative by training. I'm actually an old account guy from my agency days, but I grew up my entire career being inspired by creative people, really steeping myself deeply in production and understanding just the art of how things get produced. So when you step into a role now, I like to see myself as a builder. Bring me an idea and I'll help you make it better and bigger and bolder. And that's sort of what my teams and my agency partners will always say. It's always about ideas can only get bigger if you just have just a kernel of an idea.
Yeah, I love that. And look, lastly, just for the group, as the creative leader, I mean, what a great position within the organization. What's one piece of advice that you can leave this audience with?
Well, I mean, I think I always say never stop learning, because if you think about the ecosystem that we all are living and working in today, it's going to change in 6 months. So the other quote, my quote, don't think in 30-second spots. Think in just broad, big ideas, and then execute them across any platform that's necessary.
Amazing. Well, everyone, if we can give a round of applause for Peter. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.